And the idea here of sa'a is the actual moment in which the universe comes to an end. And it's called the hour, traditionally in the English literature, the hour. Which, I don't know, I think we have the idea in the Christian tradition of the last hour, right? Now there is also an idea of the last days, akhiru zaman. See, the last zaman, the last period of zaman. So there's an idea that the human being begins in time and is moving inexorably to an end of time. So Adam is the first man, and this is the beginning. Adam and Hawa. And the human condition is, from a prophetic point of view, it is prophets that show up throughout time. And what is important in the continuity and movement of time is the prophetic tradition itself. Right? This is the way the Quran is looking at it, is that there is a conflict going on. And this is why the historical stories in the Quran relate to prophets coming up against oppressors, coming up against tyrants. Pharaoh and Musa is the most repeated story in the Quran. Very important story. Lewis Mumford wrote a 2-volume work called The Myth of the Mega Machine. And in that book, his thesis is that basically what he calls them the axial prophets, these prophets that come around, I think about 1000 BC until Muhammad, which he considers the last of these axial prophets. And he said what these prophets do is that they're really shutting down the mega machine, right? In other words, the idea of this massive social project that relates to the world. The Pharaoh has his pyramids, and he's going to build them, and there's a lot of people that are going to die in the process. But they're going to carry those rocks, and they're going to carry it and do it all for the glory of the Pharaoh or the society or whatever. So Mumford said that he thought the Jewish tradition, the idea of the Sabbath, was a way of just shutting down the machine. Can't do it, sorry, not allowed to move anything. Right? It literally shuts it down. The idea of 5 prayers a day. A lot of Western people get very frustrated in some of these Muslim countries where everything stops. They're frustrated about a lot of things, right? but definitely the prayer is something that's very frustrating for many Western people that go there. They got business to do, and the guy says that we have to stop for prayer, right? So it's a problem. And Mumford saw it really as a way of shutting this thing down because he saw it as a very negative thing. Now, one of the things that Mumford says is that there is a movement, this historical movement towards the mega machine that in prior times, its nuts and bolts were human beings, right? The whole social project. And he thinks that Pharaoh and Musa is the best archetype of this phenomenon, that Moses comes in and is directly a challenge to the pharaonic project. That the prophets literally challenge this idea that we are here for the glorification of a hierarchy, and at the top is this elite. And so the Quran uses this idea, they're called the mala, the people up, the high people, the elite, the elect of the world. There's a film, I can't remember the name, where there was conversation going on at a table, and one of the women's a sinologist, and there's a banker there, and the banker asks, how many people are there in China, according to your statistics? And she said, about 1 billion. And he said, no, they're not. There's only 12 people in China, and I know all of them, right? And the idea there was, here's a banker who, the way that he views the world is that the only significant people in China are his friends, who also are bankers. So the idea being is that there are, you get to a certain level in societies where people really do view. One of the wonderful things I read was, I think it was Linda Crawford, who's a model, who was up flying and the actual helicopter crashed. Cindy Crawford. Helicopter crashed, and they were like at Aspen or some are going up to ski the powder. And they were looking down, and somebody said to her, "Oh, look at all the little people." And right then the helicopter just went into this spin, right? So she got a very interesting, I thought that was a very interesting thing that she kind of picked it up or made the connection. That be careful about thinking how special you are, because we're all, right, in the hands or in the protecting care of God, right? So there are people that really do, like Helmsley, was that her name, who didn't pay. Only little people pay taxes, right? Only little people pay taxes. There are people that really do think like that, right? And the Quran is really constantly bringing this up, and even goes into their inner discourse, which is fascinating. Literally, you can hear what they talk about when they're, because one of the things is he's telling his Mela, he said, listen, we got to get rid of this guy Moses because he's going to corrupt our people. Right? So he sees, this is a corrupting element because he's going to teach him not to worship us, right? Not to say the Pharaoh's God, not to give me the authority that I'm entitled to. That is a disrupting element to the power elite when you have a teaching that is literally challenging the very foundations of that structure. And this is something very powerful in the Quran. And there are many examples of it. So if you look here then, the idea that time is coming to an end. Now, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, according to his tradition, is that he is the first sign of the end. That his coming was the first sign of the end of time. That's how the Muslims view that. Now, according to the Muslims, all religious traditions have told about the end of time. There is a hadith in which the Prophet said, no prophet has come except that he told his people that time would come to an end and there would be certain signs. So we have in the Christian tradition about the end of time. One of them, you will hear there will be famines and earthquakes in many places, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, which is very interesting also, especially with modern CNN and all this stuff. Right, which is a type of just talking about wars and also potential things. And then you have the book of Revelations, which deals also with the phenomenon of the end of time. And many Christians, if you go into Christian bookstores, just so many books on the end of time. Right? Really a lot of books. And as we approach the millennium, I think we're going to have more and more of this, because you're starting actually to see, when the publishers get greedy, when they start publishing these because some of these books are way out there, right? You read, and this poor guy who wrote, he's the most famous, Hal Lindsey. He's the most famous. This guy, he has to revive his books every 10 years because he identifies, like, 1 year Kissinger's the Antichrist, but Kissinger's not around anymore, so he has to revive it every so often, because they literally trying to take the Bible and apply it to immediate events. And there's actually a television program in some states where there's a guy, he's like a newscaster with his wife, and unbelievable, like every event. Oh, well, there's Daniel 3:14. You see, Daniel says that this will happen, and there you have it. Look, isn't that wonderful? Iraqis are being bombed just like the Bible said. It's so wonderful. Jesus it's all, and it's really interesting to watch these characters, But they're out there, and people tune in and get very interested. And then National Enquirer's also got their little, you get the Globe, right? The end of the time coming. So you have a lot of, it's almost become comical, the guy with the thing, the end is nigh, that there really is a lot of craziness. And traditionally the Muslims have really kind of seen every single book I've ever seen, whether it's from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century, they say, well, all the signs are there, the end is nigh. The idea being, in reality, the end of time is the end of our lives. That is the ultimate end of time, that we will die. And so that is an end of time. But there is also an end of human time.